You're listening to Front Row with me, Nick Ahad.
Oh Allah, help and protect. Use my words to praise you. Oh Allah, ease their understand and respect. Ameen. Without these, oh Allah, help and protect. Oh my Lord, I see so thou art in. Oh Allah, ease their suffer in my area.
I'm in a sun-drenched Birmingham, a city basking in the success of the Commonwealth Games and preparing to continue the celebrations with the Birmingham Festival, a cultural programme built around the Games. I'm specifically in Spark Hill, an inner-city suburb of the city, and I'm here to meet an internationally acclaimed artist whose work is celebrated in galleries from New York to Dubai, but created right here in an industrial estate surrounded by the kind of garage where you can get your car fixed for cash. Mohammed Ali is a British Bangladeshi Muslim, also known as the Birmingham Banksy. His work incorporates graffiti, hence the moniker, but it also takes in theatre, installation and performance art. Ali's latest project, Waswasa, is being unveiled later this month at the Birmingham Hippodrome, and it's being made right here in a warehouse in Spark Hill.
Waswasa is an Arabic word for the distractions one experiences during prayer, the kind of the pulling away of that focus, that kind of whispers of temptation, of almost pulling you towards something that is negative or evil.
That's interesting that you're exploring this in a piece of art. Art by its nature is complex and contradictory, whereas Waswasa, the idea that that's something that's distracting, in prayer you're trying to get to something very simple. Those are two very different things, aren't they?
As an artist that enjoys playing and experimenting and just freestyling, even as a street artist, freestyling and making things flow and go as you go, right? It's something actually in almost kind of stark contrast to my faith as a Muslim, in how discipline and structure and actually being sensitive and being mindful of respecting others. And one might say, as an artist, surely this can't coexist, these two places. But as an artist, I've enjoyed for quite some decades now of being in a place that I can push boundaries, ask questions, provoke and challenge, but at the same time come from a place of community, a place of concern and respect and mindful of sensitivities of, at the end of the day, my art is about building bridges, right? And as cliche as that sounds, it really is about getting different people to talk to one another in an increasingly polarized society. Art for me, the purpose of art for me is about connecting, building bridges, getting people who don't often talk to one another connected.
It's interesting, you talk about provoking, being provocative, challenging, asking questions, but also being respectful and bringing people together. By its very nature, the very idea of taking something as personal, as sacred as prayer, and putting it in a gallery and then using it as a basis for a piece of performance art, there must be a real tension and even nervousness from you.
To create art, you cannot not have tension and nervousness. This is, for me, that's where the brilliance in art can come from, really, from that place of tension. So absolutely, this is something very, very sensitive. This is something, we're dealing with some heavy subjects here. We're exploring Muslim prayer in a form that perhaps has never been witnessed before and experienced before. This isn't me as some artist from some distant space, head in the clouds in some studio, in my own little planet, coming in and creating some art with something that isn't, from my world. This is me playing, experimenting with something that is sensitive to me as well. So if anybody was to challenge and say, hey, what are you doing? This is Islamic prayer. What? I'd say, yeah, bruv, this is me as well. I get it. And I'm just here to open doors.
The first thing that the audience will see when they enter the work is this space that's filled with prayer mats, and it features these prayers, the hopes and dreams from, it's mostly Muslims, 90% Muslims, some non-Muslims. Why did you want to do that, particularly in the context of what we're saying about bringing people together and those challenges?
Prayers are something that are personal. Prayers are something that are internal. your relationship between you and God, perhaps, or you and some supreme being. I think for me to expand that and pretty much break that apart and actually dig deep and pull out the prayers that are generally personal and internal and never vocalized and certainly not scribed in any place. I just feel it's such a natural thing for society to do, to scribe your dreams, your prayers, to get them out of your heart and your head and actually visualize them. As someone who comes from a street art background, I'm a firm believer that when we put our words in a public space for others to see, there's something quite extraordinary about that. When coming up with this concept of let's get the prayers and literally have them in this kind of prayer tunnel that we've created, I want the public that enter, I'm taking them on a journey through the minds of this community.
This is inspired by something that happened many years ago when you were working at a restaurant and a regular customer came across something that wasn't in his realm of experience at all, right?
Totally. I mean, this project, Waswasa, as a concept for me, it started in my dad's curry house kitchen. We're talking, how many years has it been now, that idea when Andy came in the kitchen, let me see, 25 years ago? And it's always kind of swirled in my head. I never forget that moment when Andy came into the kitchen, regular customer who came into the back to say hello to the chef, and he stumbles across someone in prayer by the tandoori oven, the guy who makes the naan breads, right? He's got his prayer mat next to his oven and his head on the ground, and he said, "What's he doing?" And he said this to me, he goes, "What's he doing?" And I remember being a bit bamboozled by his question, like, what's he doing? He's praying? You know, I suppose it's my world that I'm so used to, and someone having a window into my world. It's quite intimate. Tandoori oven, prayer mat in the depth of these kitchens. And he's got an insight into that, a rare insight, because that doesn't happen. We might have community centres and open days for each other's faith, but you ain't coming into some sweaty kitchen in the curry house. So he's come into our world and he's experienced this intimate moment, and he said, "What's he doing?" When I've stumbled upon how to answer that, well, he's praying. And then his second question was the killer one. What's he praying for? And I just thought, what do you mean? Like, he's praying, that's what we do. We don't pray for something. We don't pray when you're in need or there's a crisis. As Muslims, we are commanded to pray, and we pray to the Creator to show appreciation, rather than, and a catastrophe has taken place and then we are summoned to pray. No, it doesn't happen that way.
As well as some of the big ideas that you're wrestling with and some of the political things we've talked about, there's also an intensely personal piece here. There's a point in the performance where the actor talks about the death of his mother due to COVID, and I'm sorry to say that is your story. What was it like to incorporate such a devastating experience into your work?
Wow, okay. I'm quite a private person. My art in general has been at times personal. It reflects my own faith as a Muslim. It reflects sometimes the immigrant stories that I've experienced, and as a son of an immigrant. And I'm quite happy, of course, to inject my work. And of course, it would be madness not to bring a bit of yourself into your work as an artist. That's how it goes. But I'd say there's always been limits for me about how deep I go. I probably placed restrictions on myself. And with my mum, who we lost, it's been, January 21, a year and a half ago now. With my mum, normally years ago, I would never even think about even perhaps talking about it much really publicly. But something was different this time around, and the reason why my mum features in one of the scenes here, and I talk about the cemetery and death. I felt a duty to for some reason. I felt compelled to, and it was partly because I was so shaken and kind of impacted by the loss of my mother that I couldn't hold it back, and it wove into my work. It just penetrated right into the heart of my work, mainly because that was the way I dealt with my mum, and I kind of made a conscious decision about it, in fact, and thought and felt my art has to reflect what happened to my mum and how I found strength from the loss of my mother, the biggest calamity of my life ever. How can I contain that? I can't. In fact, I should celebrate, alhamdulillah, all praise be to God, the strength that I've managed to acquire following such a calamity. And I felt like actually to share this and make it public, and the blessings of what I might create would go back to my mother, if you like. In a way, I felt like to honor my mum and honor her legacy through my work was the best thing I could do. I've experienced something extraordinary that in my wildest dreams I didn't think I would have to witness, and I feel a duty of what I've acquired from that experience, what I've benefited from. Seeing my mum pass away and watching on a piece of glass, yeah. Due to COVID, I wasn't able to be with her. I had to watch her pass through a piece of glass, an iPad. And that experience has done something quite extraordinary, because I still sometimes sit there and think, is that real? Did that really happen? And it's impacted me in ways I can't quite explain, that I feel there's a certain strength I've acquired from that I had to conjure up from somewhere and say, I literally had to just accept that I'm going to sit in my living room and watch my mum, who's only 5 minutes down the road. I'm going to have to watch her on this piece of glass here instead. And that strength, thank God I managed to find it. And I had to kind of be that kind of rock for my family too, and my children. I feel like it's kind of benefited me in different ways that made me say, you know what, if I can take that on, I can take on the world, man. And you know what? That's that blessings of my mum, because I tell you what, that strength I acquire is from my immigrant mother. That strength that I got from an immigrant woman who came here in the 60s, that is, that strength. That's why I felt a duty to use this work, spread the word, to say this show comes from a personal space. It comes celebrating the spirit of our immigrant generation, immigrant parents that gave birth to my generation, that has to go out there and challenge this crazy world that we live in, to deal with some of the ugliness that exists in this world. And that's why I was comfortable sharing what I've been through.
May you always help us create a world without racism, Islamophobia. Give me strength to speak the truth, poverty, to use my words. Allah, I find it very hard to speak. Dear Allah, grant us all a place in heaven.
Waswasa starts at Birmingham Hippodrome next Tuesday, the 25th of August, and runs until the 3rd of September.